In the summer, we can always count on our gardens to find inspiration for dinner. Fresh local produce like these tomatoes keeps us in tune with the rhythms of nature. Let me share a secret recipe. Discover an ingredient that fires your imagination. Choose other flavors to match. Find the best way to cook them. My secret recipe? Cooking without a recipe. I love tomatoes so much that I celebrate the start of the season every year with a themed dinner. The guest of honor, the bounty in my own backyard. These babies are my inspiration. Hey, it's fun creating an entire dinner featuring just one ingredient. I encourage you to get excited too. Get to know an ingredient you love by exploring beyond the cookbook. Let the ingredients show you the way. When my tomatoes are as perfect as they are now, the last thing I want to do to them is mince them, chop them, dice them, simmer them, puree them into oblivion. That's for off-season tomatoes. I want to show off what Mother Nature's given me. And I think the best way to concentrate and intensify the flavors of a good tomato is to roast it. Hey, I'm going to make a nice rustic roast tomato sauce. So, of course, I'm going to need a pasta. But not one of these thin pastas, because spaghetti, linguine, and fettuccine need a smooth sauce to stick to. Instead, I'm going to need a pasta like that, with lots of nooks and crannies in it. A pasta like penne, which is hollow, and it has all those ridges. Hey, penne and roast tomatoes are a perfect marriage. Okay, it really is as simple as taking these tomatoes and slowly roasting them in the oven until they start to break down. But I might as well take advantage of the opportunity to add some flavor to the tomatoes. And there's some obvious choices. Of course, salt and pepper. Salt will help balance all the natural flavors of the tomatoes, and pepper will add some kick to it. Olive oil will add some richness and body. And of course, my old friends, onions and garlic. These will add some pungency and character to the tomatoes without overwhelming their natural flavors. I'm going to mince these onions up so that way I can mix them in really well with all the tomatoes. Now, it's important to remember that tomatoes are a fruit, so they're pretty sweet. They're not all that savory. By adding onions and garlic, I'll bump up the savory feel of the dish. Now, tomatoes, onions, garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper are the base ingredients. I could easily toss this all together and fire it into the oven right now. But there is an opportunity to add some optional flavors as well. Things like herbs, spices, meats, bacon, ham, or pancetta. Pancetta is actually Italian bacon. All I'm going to do is take this and slice it up really thin. Pancetta, because of its salt cure, will add a whole whack of flavor to this dish. Now just take the time to sprinkle this around right now. I don't want it to clump up all in one place in the middle of the tomatoes. I want to spread it around. Now it's as simple as popping these into a nice slow oven and giving the tomatoes and pancetta time to get to know each other. After an hour or so, when the tomatoes start to soften up and caramelize, they'll be the best of friends. But you know what? The only problem with that is I don't want to wait that long for some tomato. I think I'll make my favorite tomato snack. When the first tomatoes come in every year, this is the first thing we do with them. Slice them up thin, Spread them out on a plate. Season them up just a little bit. Some salt, freshly ground pepper. This is a good time to get into my extra virgin olive oil collection. I've got quite a few, and they're all very pungent and very fruity. Perfect accompaniment to those tomatoes. And a little bit of sharp balsamic vinegar, too. Now, balsamic vinegar is not as strong as other vinegars. It's actually a relatively mild vinegar. It's got quite a woody flavor to it, a nice sweet mellowness to it. Perfect for tomatoes. Man, is that good. That's what cooking is all about. This tastes like a garden. Simple is best. Now, what else am I going to do with tomatoes today? Tomatoes are in season, and I'm celebrating tonight with an all-tomato feast. They're one of my favorite ingredients to cook with, not just because they taste so good, but because they're so easy to create with. Let's just say the tomato page in my kitchen journal, my culinary scrapbook, is filling up fast today. I tossed a few of the ripe beauties with salt, pepper, olive oil, onions, garlic, and for extra flavor, thinly sliced pancetta, Italian bacon. And they're roasting away in the oven, simmering nicely. They'll be ready in another hour or so, which gives me lots of time to bang out a salad. I've got some beautiful mesclun greens standing by. That's a fancy French word that just means mixture. And as you can see, there's quite a few different greens in there. That's why I love mesclun mix so much. All that flavor, all that variety, all that color and texture. Of course, tonight there's only one vinaigrette on the menu, tomato vinaigrette. Take a nice ripe tomato, one lemon. Of course, I'm going to get the zest off of that lemon. And something nice and rich with full body, the olive oil. Just to balance everything out, salt and pepper. Pepper will add some nice zip to it, of course. Of course, the only thing missing here now is my lemon juice. So, I think I'll dump this vinaigrette right down into the bottom of the salad bowl. I'll toss this later. I don't want to toss it now because my greens, of course, will wilt long before dinner. And I've got another tomato flavor to add to this salad. My homemade dried tomatoes. They're so simple to make. Begin with a dozen ripe plum tomatoes. Halve them, then toss with a generous splash of olive oil and season with salt and pepper. Arrange them face up in neat rows on a lightly oiled baking sheet. Place in a 250-degree oven and slowly bake until shriveled and dry, about 6 to 8 hours or overnight. Now, these dried tomatoes are actually very similar to the tomatoes roasting in the oven. Their flavors have been intensely concentrated, but unlike the tomatoes in the oven, the dried tomatoes keep their shape because they're processed at a much lower temperature. Now, here's another great ingredient for that salad. Whole basil leaves. Hey, things that grow together go together. And I don't know about your garden, but in my garden, the basil grows right next to the tomatoes. I actually do this all the time with salads. I love adding whole herb leaves to my salads. They're just loaded with flavor. And hey, look at it. Doesn't that look like a lettuce green? Nothing to it. Now, the only thing missing from the salad at the moment is something nice and crisp, some crusty crouton. A salad is all about contrast. Contrast in texture makes a great salad. Crisp croutons, nice soft greens, great salad. There we go. Some olive oil. Some salt and pepper. And then I simply toss these up. Now, because I added all that olive oil, the oil will help the bread toast in the oven. Those will bake off in no time at 350. And boy, those tomatoes are looking good too. They're roasting up nicely. Tomato day is shaping up great. I've got friends coming over for dinner tonight. We're going to have a great tomato salad, some nice tomato pasta. I still have time to whip up a tomato drink though. If anything's worth celebrating, tomato season is. Some friends of ours are coming over for dinner tonight, so I'm rolling out all things ripe and red with an all-tomato menu. Of course, I'm keeping it nice and simple because that's the best way to show off tomatoes. And I'm keeping track as I go in my kitchen journal, my culinary scrapbook, on the tomato page, of course. First, I toss some tomatoes with salt, pepper, olive oil, onions, garlic, and for extra flavor, thinly sliced pancetta, Italian bacon. They're roasting away. I also made a salad featuring 2 different kinds of tomato, in a vinaigrette and oven-dried. And I still have a huge pile of super ripe tomatoes standing by, just the thing to make some tomato juice. I'm going to make a nice cocktail for dinner tonight, but it's not the kind of tomato juice you're thinking about. Watch this. I think the best bartenders are chefs. I routinely play around in my kitchen with drink ideas. I mean, who says that when you create something in the kitchen that you have to enjoy it with a fork? Who says you can't just sip it and drink it? So, I'll begin by simply pureeing all these tomatoes. That should do it. Looks like tomato juice, doesn't it? Next step, a pillowcase. Take any pillowcase you have, clean it up good, and moisten it. Then wring it dry, and it's ready to take that tomato juice and turn it into tomato water. Here's where it gets a little tricky because you don't want the bag to touch the bowl. So hold it up above the bowl and then pour in the juice. Now, tomato juice is full of tomato pulp. That's why it's so thick when you drink it. But within that tomato juice is a clear golden liquid yearning to breathe free. You know, it's obviously going to take a little bit of time to get out of there, but when it does, it's so full of flavor. You can improvise just about any way you can figure in your house to hang this. That should do it. Now, whatever you do, don't squeeze the bag, because if you do, you'll squeeze tomato pulp out and the water will turn cloudy. Let time and gravity work their magic. And of course, make sure you pick a nice, ripe, juicy tomato to do this with. My favorite tomato grows in my backyard. And come August or September, when it's red, when it's warm and fragrant, when it's ripe, I control when it comes off the vine. But the rest of the year, I don't have that control. I have to rely on greenhouses just like this one that supply my local supermarket, which works just fine. Because these days, supermarkets don't have seasons anyway. Consumers expect fresh produce year-round. But there is a hitch. Because that beautiful ripe tomato I love so much just doesn't travel very well. It can't handle the journey from this vine to your table. So tomato growers are forced to pick their tomatoes underripe. So here's what I suggest. When you buy a tomato in the supermarket, take it home, don't put it in the refrigerator because cold air will kill whatever flavor it has. Instead, put it on the windowsill. Let the sun ripen it further, because after all, a tomato is not a tomato if it doesn't taste like a tomato. Just look at that clear golden nectar. Oh, it tastes like a day in the garden. There's so much tomato flavor in that water right there. In fact, all of the tomato flavor is in the water. There is not a lick of tomato flavor in that bag right now. It all ends up in here. Magic stuff, really. It's going to make a great cocktail. And how do you know when it's done? It's very simple. When the bag stops dripping. Now, there's something else that grows in my garden near the tomatoes that I'm going to fire up now. I love zucchini, but I want it to be nice and brown and caramelized. So the key to that is to preheat my pan. Now, of course, you can cut zucchini whatever way you care to. I prefer something more chunky like this because it just has more surface area to brown. Now, while I wait for that pan to heat up, I think I'll mince an onion up too. Just one. I'll sprinkle this in with the zucchini. The best way to know if the pan is hot enough is to simply put your hand over the surface. If it feels hot, it's definitely ready to go, and it does feel hot. So, a little splash of olive oil and the zucchini. One of the keys to making my zucchini is to take the battery out of the smoke detector before I start doing it. That's why I turn off the smoke detector. Now, a little salt and pepper. There we go. And now that the zucchini is browned, I can add some tomatoes. I've actually got some yellow and orange and some red ones, of course. The yellow and orange ones don't have as much flavor as the red ones, actually. They're more of a low-acid type tomato. They're actually kind of a pretty face, but that's okay. They're going to look great in my zucchini. Now, at this point, when I add these tomatoes, I'm basically going to stop the browning process cold because of the high liquid content in the tomatoes. But make sure your zucchini is as brown as you like it before you add the liquid in the tomatoes. And now I'm just going to turn that down, and it's time to fire the pasta too. This won't take very long to cook, so it's almost time to mix up the drinks. I see a tomato party in the very near future. It's tomato day, and my guests will be here any minute. And to get the tomato party started, I've got some tomato water. I'm going to whip up a cocktail with this. I distilled this from pure, fresh, ripe tomatoes, and this I distilled from pure, fresh, ripe potatoes. That should warm things up a bit, and I'll just top that off with a splash of tomato water. Ah, now that's what I call a cocktail. Mixed in the kitchen, no less. I better top that one up, though. There we go. And now, growing right next to the tomatoes in the garden, the roast zucchini. Of course, they're not roasted in the garden. I roasted them right here in this pan. And I also added some oregano, some onions, and a couple of different tomatoes, too. I've got orange, yellow, and red tomatoes in here. Lots of flavor. But the main event today is penne pasta. Now, years ago, when I was getting started as a cook, I once made the mistake of rinsing off some pasta right after I'd cooked it. Bad idea. I was working for this Italian chef, and he saw 2,000 years of tradition heading down the drain. Because when you rinse pasta, you rinse all the starch off the outside of it. And that starch helps the sauce stick to the pasta. That way you don't end up with one of these bowls of pasta with all the pasta on the top and all the sauce on the bottom. Let's just say I learned my lesson that day, and I learned how to peel 50 pounds of onions in 20 minutes. Now just look at those roast tomatoes. They break down immediately, and they've got so much concentrated flavor in them right now, this dish is going to taste amazing. This has got to be the simplest pasta I know how to make. And of course, the finishing touch, some nice hard Parmesan grated right on top. Time for a taste. Boy, that roasting intensifies those flavors. That tomato tastes amazing. You know, a perfect red ripe tomato is a gift from Mother Nature. It's just my job to share it with my guests and show it off, which is easy when you treat it simply and you don't bury it under a ton of other ingredients. I like to let its natural goodness shine through, and so can you, because a perfect tomato is so delicious, you can give your guests a special gift without ever even cracking a cookbook. Anyone like some salad?
I love some salad.
Tomato salad. Wow, does that ever taste good, huh?
Very nice. It really tastes the tomato.
Roast zucchini with tomatoes. Natural flavor combination, of course.
Orange and some yellow tomato.
Yep.
There too.
Almost burned the house down today sauteing that zucchini, though. A toast. Here's to this year's tomato crop. Cheers.
Cheers.